Hi guys, in this video we're going to be adding and subtracting unlike fractions. So first, just a reminder, what is an unlike fraction? An unlike fraction are fractions that have different denominators. So, for example, maybe 1/3 and 2/4. These aren't like fractions because the denominator, the bottom number, isn't the same. So the pieces are not the same. And when we add or subtract unlike fractions, the first thing we need to do is we have to rename these fractions using the least common denominator. We need to find out what multiple the 3 and the 4 have in common. We need to rename these fractions before we can add or subtract. So let's do this let's start off with an example. Let's start off with, let's do 1/2 plus 1/4. These are not like fractions, they're unlike fractions. 2 and 4 are not the same number. So what we need to do is come up with a least common denominator. So my denominators are 2 and 4. What I'm going to do is I'm going to write the multiples of these. So 2 times 1 is 2. 2 times 2 is 4. Times 3 is 6. And then the same thing, 4 times 1 is 4. 4 times 2 is 8. Times 3 is 12. And we're going to find what numbers do these two columns have in common. And the answer is this 4 right here. Because 2 times 2 is 4. And 4 times 1 is 4. So our least common denominator is going to be this 4. So I'm going to rename these fractions. So 1/2, I'm going to multiply by both of these numbers by 2. So I'm going to do 1 times 2, and I'm going to do 2 times 2. The reason I'm multiplying by 2 is because that's where my multiple is. My least common multiple is 2 times 2 is 4. And so my 1/2 now becomes 2/4. So 1/2 is going to be written as 2/4. And I don't need to rename this 1/4 because now these are like fractions. So now I have 2/4 plus 1/4. When we add like fractions, because now these are like fractions, we're going to add the numerators, 2 plus 1, and put it over the denominator, which is 4. So this becomes 3/4. So 1/2 plus 1/4 is 3/4. Let's do another example. It's a little more complicated. Switch colors over here. All right. This time, we're gonna do 3/4 plus 1/5. Again, these are unlike fractions. The denominator isn't the same, so we need to rename them. Our denominators are 4 and 5. And I'm just going to write down the multiples of 4. So we have 4, 8, 12, 16, 20. And then multiples of 5. We've got 5, 10, 15, 20. Oh, we found something that repeats. 20 is our least common denominator. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply this. I'm going to multiply the numerator and denominator by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 over 5. So I'm going to do 3/4 times 5 times 5, because the 20 is the fifth number in these multiples. So 3/4 is going to be rewritten as 15/20. And I'm going to do the same thing with the 1/5. I'm going to start off with 1/5. And I'm going to multiply this by 4/4 because it's the fourth number. So times 4. And then I wrote 5. 4 times 4. And so 1/5 is going to be rewritten as 4/20. Now that I've rewritten them, we're going to solve just like we would if they were like fractions. 15/20 plus 4/20. We're going to add the numerators, so 15 plus 4/20. And 15 plus 4 is 19. So our answer is going to be 19/20. That's our final answer. Can't be simplified. I will do one example with a subtraction problem, just to really drive this home. Let's try 2/3 minus 1/2. Again, unlike fractions, we have a 3 and a 2. So I'm going to write my two denominators over here and then write out their multiples. I have 3, 6, 9, 12. Over here I have 2, 4, 6, 8. You can see that our least common denominator is going to be 6. The smallest number that's in both columns. So that means this fraction, 2/3, I'm going to multiply both these numbers by 2 because it's the second number in this column. So I'm going to do 2/3. I'm going to multiply both these numbers by 2. So this can be rewritten as 4/6. And then for the 1/2, I'm going to do 1/2. And I'm going to multiply both these numbers by 3 because it's the third number in this column. So this becomes 3/6. So when I do 2/3 minus 1/2, this is really going to be written as 4/6 minus 3/6. When we subtract like fractions now, we're going to do 4 minus 3 and then keep the denominator 6. 4 minus 3 is 1. So 1/6 is our final answer.